P. Diddy. Alright, so who better to start this series off than probably the most infamous rapper of the now, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy. Diddy is the founder of the legendary Bad Boy Records, as well as a rapper himself with millions of records sold, as well as entrepreneurship, production, and yeah, basically he's the pinnacle of what any rapper could ever hope to become. Diddy was also one of the wealthiest men to ever come from hip-hop, and as you might expect, with this wealth came a lot of power, and arguably, Diddy is one of the most powerful men ever in music. Diddy was also respected for his position, but behind the scenes, there was something a bit more sinister going on that the public was never privy to. You see, throughout the 90s and all the way up until just a few years ago, Diddy threw what has now been given the nickname of a white party, otherwise known as a Diddy party. Now initially these parties were seen as these lavish, star-studded parties that only the biggest and most famous celebrities could attend. These events were attended by some of the most famous celebrities in the world and were seen as a high-profile event for anyone to attend. However, there's some new information that has been brought to the forefront which has put Diddy and these parties in a new light, but to understand why, we need to go back to 2023. Starting in late 2023, multiple women came forward suing Diddy, claiming various horrific things had happened to them at the hand of Diddy. Now these lawsuits all alleged some very serious things, but the most prominent of these lawsuits came from Cassie Venture. Now Cassie herself has had a career in the music industry and began dating Diddy in 2007. However, just 5 years after their breakup in 2023, Cassie filed a lawsuit against Diddy alleging multiple things, with the actual lawsuit alleging that the dark times were those she spent trapped by Mr. Combs in a cycle of abuse, violence, and sex trafficking. The lawsuit also accused Diddy of beating her, forcing her to have sex with others while he filmed it, and even blowing up a man's car who had a relationship with her. And in court, it was later revealed that that man was Kid Cudi. Now this lawsuit was filed on November 16th, 2023, and the very next day, it was settled out of court for the sum of $20 million. But despite the settling of this case, the research into Diddy's past continued, and soon enough, the accusations of wrongdoings continued pouring in. And over the next few months, Diddy had been accused by multiple women of sexually abusing them. On top of all that, in May of 2024, CNN obtained and released surveillance footage of Diddy physically abusing Cassie at a Los Angeles hotel in 2016. Diddy continued receiving accusations from women, and it's important to state that some of these accusations came from women who claimed to be underage at the time of what happened to them. However, the other thing that a lot of these lawsuits and allegations addressed were what happened at the Diddy parties. It's been claimed that these parties, as well as Diddy's other after parties and such, were home to some very disturbing events, which have been dubbed as freak-offs. Now these freak-offs are a bit too wild for me to describe in detail here on YouTube, but with a name like freak-off, I'm sure you could use your imagination. Now it's important to state that many people have said that the white parties were a totally separate thing from the freak-offs and that the white parties were really just social events, so I guess it's important to say that not everybody in these photographs are confirmed freak-off participants. I'm also not defending them in any way. They could have been freak-off participants. I'm just saying that the evidence of these photographs isn't evidence that they got their freak on. Diddy was arrested in September of 2024, and while the authorities checked his residence, they seized over 1,000 bottles of baby oil. And this fact has since become a meme, and you can find tons of baby oil Diddy stuff. Now the entire Diddy situation truly deserves a video of its own, as there's just too many accusations and interesting facts for me to list off in this short entry, so maybe I'll talk about it in a future video. Diddy was ultimately found not guilty of racketeering and sex trafficking, but was found guilty on 2 counts of transportation for prostitution and is currently facing 20 years in prison. However, Diddy is still behind bars as of the writing of this video, and I'm curious what the future's gonna hold for him. Bushwick Bill. Richard Shaw, better known as Bushwick Bill, was a rapper best known for his work with the GETO BOYZ. However, in 1991, Bushwick Bill was involved in an insane story which almost left him dead. Now, accounts of this story have varied depending on which report you read, but this is the story as Bushwick told it on the Howard Stern Show in April of 1999. Now, Bushwick Bill's mother had been injured while working, but she was unable to pay the deductible on her insurance. So Bushwick attempted to get money from his label to help out his mother, but was unsuccessful in doing so. Now, Bushwick really wanted to help his mom get the money and remembered that his mother had a life insurance policy on him. So one night, while under the influence of Everclear and PCP, he began attempting to get his girlfriend to shoot him, with Bushwick's thought process being that if Bushwick is killed, his mother would get the life insurance money. Bushwick claims that he hit his girlfriend with a vacuum cleaner while trying to provoke her into shooting him, going as far as to threaten the life of their child. According to Bushwick, she finally pulled the trigger, with Bushwick saying he put his face in front of the weapon, and saying that he more or less forced her to shoot him. The bullet hit Bushwick in his eye, practically exploding upon impact. He was transported to the hospital where doctors were able to save his life, but Bushwick lost his eye in the process. However, the craziest part of this story is that while all of this was happening, the GETO Boys were actually in the process of recording a new album. And the day before his eye removal surgery, his fellow group members showed up, as well as their management team, with a crazy idea for their next album's album cover. Scarface and Willie D rolled Bushwick's gurney out into the hospital hall, all while Bushwick's eye was fully exposed. This was photographed and later used as the official album cover for the 1991 album We Can't Be Stopped. The controversial album art helped the GETO Boys gain their first and only platinum record. And despite the cover being seen as one of the most iconic album covers of all time, Bushwick as well as Scarface have expressed regret when talking about the cover. Bushwick stated the following in the book Check the Technique, Liner Notes for Hip Hop Junkies. It still hurts me to look at that cover because that was a personal thing I went through. I still feel the pain from the fact that I've got a bullet in my brain. To see that picture only brings it back more so. I think it was pretty wrong of them to do it. Even though I went along with the program at first, I really didn't understand why that picture was so important for them. Important enough to take the IV out of my arm and endanger my life by taking the patch off my eye. I could have been blinded for life. Big Lurch. Antron Singleton Sr., aka Big Lurch, is a rapper you probably have never heard of, but his story is one of the darkest stories you'll find in all of hip-hop. Born in 1976, Big Lurch was a rapper prominent in southern hip-hop and gangster rap. Big Lurch started his rap career in 1996 as a member of the Cosmic Slop Shop, a rap group from Oakland, releasing their only studio album, Da Family, in 1998, before disbanding due to their album not being as successful as they hoped. Lurch continued rapping after this with several mixtapes and multiple features throughout the next couple of years, including tracks with Mac Dre, Mystical, and E40 amongst others. However, his solo rap career was cut short after he did something horrific. As the story goes, on April 10th, 2002, the body of a young woman was found by a friend in a Los Angeles apartment. It was reported that her face had bite marks on it, her chest had been cut open, and one of her lungs was missing. Big Lurch was noticed in the road nearby. However, he was naked and covered in blood and acting sporadically. Additionally, it was reported that when police approached Big Lurch, he was chewing on something. He was arrested, and after medical examination, he was found to have had, quote, blood and flesh not belonging to him in his stomach. In layman's terms, Big Lurch killed and ate his roommate while he was high on PCP. Lurch was charged with first-degree murder and aggravated mayhem in 2003, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, despite this horrific crime, his rap career wasn't actually over just yet, as in 2004, his first and only studio album dropped under Black Market Records. Now, information about this album is hard to find, but the album includes skits of phone calls to Big Lurch while he was in prison, alongside tracks that Lurch had in the vault prior to his conviction. Lurch is still alive and is currently incarcerated at the California State Prison in Los Angeles. And Big Lurch has earned a small cult following despite everything he's done. There was even a petition named #FreeBigLurch created just a few years ago, so yeah, do with that information what you will. X-Rated. Honoré Brown, better known as Xrated, is a rapper with a very disturbing past, all of which has been well documented not only in the contents of his music, but in the recording of the music itself. Xrated is a California-based rapper who was affiliated with the Crips and was best known for his gangster rap and horrorcore style, with the release of his debut album Psychoactive in April of 1992. However, just 1 month prior to the release of this album, X was arrested alongside 3 other gang members. As the story goes, the group of men broke into a residence with the intention of killing 2 rival gang members, but when they saw a shadowy figure in the hallway, the men opened fire. However, the group didn't kill one of their intended targets and had instead shot 42-year-old Patricia Harris, the mother of their targets. X has maintained that he wasn't the one who shot Harris to this day, and the murder weapon was never found. However, prosecutors were able to match the murder weapon to the same exact gun that Xrated is holding on the Psychoactive album cover, and they even used lyrics from that album against him in court. During the build-up to his trial though, X continued recording music over a prison telephone, and in 1995, released his second album Exorcist, which again was created by X rapping over the prison phone, with the calls being recorded and put over a beat afterwards. However, in 1996, X was found guilty of murder and was sentenced to 31 years in prison. X continued rapping though, and in 1999 released the album Unforgiven, which was recorded behind bars using a small recorder which had been smuggled into the prison. X recorded around 65 songs during the Unforgiven era, one of which was the track Macaframa, which has gone on to become one of his best known tracks. Xrated released another 11 albums during his incarceration and even started his own label. X continued building a name for himself as a rapper despite being behind bars. However, some in his prison attempted to take advantage of his small but respectable fame, as in 2010, X was approached by 3 men who wanted X to produce their rap album. However, X declined. This angered those 3 men so much that they attacked X, stabbing him 7 times and causing a small riot in the process. And it's been reported that after the attack, X stood back up and started crip walking, which doesn't add anything to the story. That's just hard as hell, so I'm including it. X served 26 years in prison, until finally being paroled in 2018. During the time of his release, his story had been shared far and wide, with multiple news stations covering his story and highlighting the maturity of X, who had become a totally new person behind bars. And it's important to say that his maturity was partly due to a surprising duo that he had befriended while behind bars: the Menendez brothers. The Menendez brothers are 2 brothers who were convicted of killing their parents in 1989. However, the conviction has gone down as one of the most controversial convictions of all time, as many feel as if the Menendez brothers should be freed due to the circumstances surrounding the murder of their parents. X met both Lyle and Eric during his incarceration and credits them with supporting him during his rehabilitation. The brothers even went as far as to write a letter of support for X for his parole hearing. Nowadays, X is still recording music, and in 2022 signed to Strange Music, which is owned by Tech9. X also advocates for prison reform, as well as the release of the Menendez brothers, and even released a song in support of them in just the last few months. King Gordy. So most of the rappers you guys are going to see throughout these videos are people with disturbing backstories well before they started recording music. However, King Gordy has been included solely based on the lyrics he raps, as King Gordy has dropped some of the most offensive, twisted, and dark lyrics you will ever hear laid on a track. Waverly Alfred III, aka King Gordy, is a Detroit-based rapper best known for being the king of horrorcore, and in time, you're gonna see why. Gordy started rapping in the late 90s, early 2000s, quickly signing a deal with Web Entertainment. Gordy released his first album with Web Entertainment, The Entity, which had production work from Eminem and features plenty shady adjacent artists. Gordy was also able to land a small role in Eminem's 8 Mile, playing the role of Big O, the rapper who, quote, was the fat man flipping burgers at Mickey D's. However, after this period, Gordy disappeared for a few years. I mean, he was still doing features and stuff, including Proof and Bazaar's albums, but he didn't release anything else under Web Entertainment. But then Gordy suddenly returned with a new style, fully embracing horrorcore and all of the gory lyrics that come along with the territory. Gordy released a total of 7 projects independently from 2006 to 2009. The lyrics contained within some of these projects are easily the most offensive lyrics you will ever hear. Gordy shies from no topic. However, the most offensive topic that has been highlighted throughout his lyrics are about pedophilia, in which, more or less, Gordy raps from the perspective of someone committing the act. For example, his infamous track Mr. 187 includes lyrics of him killing and raping a 5-year-old girl. Another notable example is the outro from his 2009 album Xerxes the God King, where Gordy discusses killing the entire Obama family and doing some very horrific things to their daughters. Now, despite Gordy's insane lyrics, he's been able to gain serious respect in the hip-hop world and is currently seen as a Detroit legend in music. And he has a very large cult following, including me, which, listen, I know that's insane to say after what I just talked about like 30 seconds ago, but trust me, listen to his music. I promise you his lyricism, despite being fucking insane, is leagues above anyone else. Now, that's not to say Gordy has had an easy personal life. Gordy was shot 5 times during an attempted robbery in 2013 and has had several stints in jail. Despite this, Gordy's become a Detroit legend who is still rapping to this day, most notably as a part of Even Heathens with fellow rapper Ill Temper. Gordy has been steady rapping for 25 years and is showing no signs of stopping, nor does he show signs of quitting when discussing some of the forbidden topics he discusses. R.A. the Rugged Man. R.A. Thorburn, aka R.A. the Rugged Man, is the final rapper that we're going to discuss today, as his story is one of the most intense and depressing stories of any rapper I've researched for these videos. So R.A. started rapping at 12 and was able to gain respect for his lyricism at an early age. R.A. signed to Jive Records in 1992 at the young age of 18 for nearly $2 million, which sounds like the dream to any aspiring rapper. However, this wasn't all it was cracked up to be, as the relationship between R.A. and his label was quickly soured. Now, R.A. during this era was a wild guy, and I don't think Jive fully understood what they were getting into. For example, there's a specific rumor that's been passed around through the music industry in which it says R.A. got in an argument with a sound engineer, so as revenge, he smeared his doo-doo butter all over the engineer's studio, including his expensive soundboard. Nardwuar even brought this story up during his interview with R.A., and R.A. didn't deny the allegations.
How hard is it to diarrhea on command? That's not easy.
I was young. I was a kid, and they said that I put the shit on the walls and the mixing boards, and I got crazy and shitted everywhere. I mean, I don't know. I was a kid, man, you know, so.
However, another incident came during this time with Jive, in which R.A. was sued by a woman working for Jive, claiming he'd sexually harassed her. R.A. maintains his innocence, yet the label paid off the woman suing him and used his money to do so. Now, this is just a sliver of the situations that caused the relationship between R.A. and Jive to sour, causing R.A. to want to get dropped by Jive. His ultimate act of rebellion in an attempt to get dropped came during a showcase for Jive Records in 1994. R.A. was so angry at his label that before his set, he went to find a lady you can pay for certain services, to which he duct taped her mouth, handcuffed her, and carried her on stage with him while he performed the songs Every Record Label Sucks Dick and Cunt Renaissance. But instead of letting him go, Jive got their revenge by holding him into his contract, forcing him to be unable to release any music for years. R.A. was eventually able to get out of his Jive contract and didn't release his first album until 2004. 12 years after signing his first deal, with the release of Die Rugged Man Die. R.A. continued rapping, making significant strides in his career, but in 2006, R.A. was featured on the Jedi Mind Tricks album Servants in Heaven, Kings in Hell. And this feature has gone down as one of the greatest and most raw verses of all time, as R.A. opens up about something very personal. So R.A.'s father was Staff Sergeant John Thorburn of the 101st Airborne Screaming Eagles in Green Berets 10th Special Forces in Vietnam. For 7 years, Sergeant Thorburn served in the Army and Air Force, gaining numerous medals for his service, but on March 14, 1970, Sergeant John was aboard a UH-1P Huey helicopter, which was shot down by enemy fire. The resulting gunfire ended with the pilot of the helicopter being killed, with the other 3 airmen seriously injured. Miraculously though, Thorburn survived after being rescued and was ultimately discharged for the injuries he sustained. However, even though he was able to return home alive to his family, there was another long-lasting effect of the Vietnam War that he was unaware of, and that was Agent Orange. Now, I could go on all day about Agent Orange, but in short, Agent Orange is a chemical, and it's used to kill plants and leaves and such, and was used in the Vietnam War as a way to rid the enemy of their cover. But the problem is that the effects of Agent Orange on the human body are catastrophic, and the Vietnam vets were basically around it 24/7. Now, not only were we dropping tons of Agent Orange on the Vietnamese people, but our soldiers were practically living side by side with Agent Orange. And it's also worth noting that the government told the soldiers not to worry about Agent Orange at all, and that the chemical was harmless. But as time went on, many soldiers realized that the chemical was in fact causing health issues. And one of those soldiers who noticed it was R.A.'s father, Sergeant Thorburn, as 2 of R.A.'s siblings were both born with health defects as a result of Agent Orange, with his brother passing away at 10 years old and his sister passing away at 26. Now, going back to the feature from that Jedi Mind Tricks album, tells the story of R.A.'s father and in gruesome detail describes the events that took place in his father's life. Rapping from the perspective of his father, this verse is easily one of the rawest verses ever laid on a track and is one of the most gut-wrenching verses you will ever hear, especially once you remember that it's all true. But guys, I think that's going to go ahead and do it for this one. I originally wanted to cover all 12 rappers on this chart, but this video got so long that I decided to break it into 2 videos. If that video's out, you can click it right here to watch the other 6 rappers, but that's going to do it for today, guys. So if you liked the video, like the video, and subscribe. It helps out a lot. I don't know, I guess until next time, remember one thing, Kobe sucks.